Oh, howdy all, grab yourselves a beer, it is time for some Path of Exile discussion. Today, I wanted to talk about the challenges in the Blight League in a little bit more depth, aimed at newer players that are looking for advice on how to get to 12 of 40 challenges. Now, in summary, this league is a bit easier to hit 12 challenges in than the last few. Where in Legion, I had level 90 on my second character before I hit 12 challenges, and in Synthesis, I believe that the 12th challenge I got was hitting level 90 on my first character. In Blight, I had 12 challenges done. I think I had 13, with a number of easy ones still hanging over as easy ones that I could pick up before I hit level 88 on my first character. Now, whilst the 12 challenge is easier in the Blight League than it has been in the previous couple, I will warn you that 36 and 40 are both much harder in the Blight League than they have been in previous leagues. So mostly these are organised inside the challenges set up inside the challenges window from easiest to hardest. This is not exactly true, but I picked out 12 that I think are pretty easy and they're almost all at the top. So, the first one is to identify rare items in 9 different inventory slots. This one's pretty trivial. All you need to do is just loot a rare item off the ground and hit it with an identify scroll. You probably will be able to do this by Act 2 or 3, and the only thing you'll need to go out of your way to do is to identify a shield or quiver if your character isn't using those particular inventory slots. So for instance, if you're dual wielding, or if you're using a weapon and a shield, you're not using a weapon and a shield, you're using a two-hander or two one-handed weapons, then in that case you'll have to go a little bit out of your way to do that, but that'll be pretty trivial. Next up is complete Blight Encounters 1. All this really requires you to do is complete a Blight encounter, because you'll get the other two with that, you're pretty likely to. This is very easy, and you'll have it done by the time you leave Act 1. Very, very easy, but you might not get it the first attempt. It's easy to stuff up Blight encounters the first time you try them, but with a little bit of practice, you'll get them down pat, and you'll get this challenge very, very easily. Next up is complete these side quests. So there's a list of 5 different side quests throughout the game. None of these are required for progress, and as you can see, I'm lazy. I've only done 3 of them so far. And these are not difficult quests. The most out of your way one is a Fixture of Fate. That is the library quest in Act 3, which is actually quite a useful quest to do early in a league anyway, because it gets you access to all of the gems. Great White Beast is very good if you haven't picked up a Quicksilver Flask. You probably want to, if you haven't picked up a Quicksilver Flask other than the Tidal Island one, you probably want to do this anyway when you're leveling a character. Silver Locket is Act 7, Wings of Astri Act 8, Map to Soartha is Act 10, so you'll need to get to Act 10 in order to do this, and you'll have no trouble just going back and running these quests. If you're not sure, just bring up the quest interface and it'll remind you what quests remain open in each act. You can then go and do them. Defeat these Act Bosses 1. This one you're going to have to do to progress through the game, and you'll have it done by the time you finish Act 5. Complete these Encounters 1. This just requires you to engage with past league mechanics. For opening a Vaal Vessel in a Vaal side area, during the acts you can find Vaal side areas pretty often. All you need to do is complete one, and then the loot vessel at the end is the Vaal Vessel. If you're already in maps though, and you don't want to go back to the acts, all you need to do is stick a fragment into the map device and run it as though it was a map. So something like Sacrifice at Noon, stick that into the map device and it will create an instance you can run that will be like a quarter of a map. Run to the end of that and it will just be a level 67, 68 or 69. Don't waste your Sacrifice at Midnight fragments, they'd give level 70 zones. But once you've done that, you will then get a Vaal Vessel which will have some loot in it. Incidentally, if you're interested in the Vanity Divination card, which is for a Corrupted Tabula Rasa, then this is where you get it. I think they're about 1 in 10 drop rate from the Vaal Vessels. Gain the Acceleration Shrine buff. That one's pretty trivial. Just find an Acceleration Shrine. They're not super common, but they're not rare either, and you'll probably encounter at least one during the acts. If not, I feel there may be one every 50 maps or so. So yeah, you won't have any trouble finding that. Modify an Arcanist Strongbox. So, from memory, identifying them doesn't count. You need to transmute or alchemy an Arcanist Strongbox. Arcanist Strongbox, again, they're a bit uncommon, maybe 1 per 50 zones. You'll probably find one while you're leveling before you get to the end of the acts. If you don't, you'll get one during mapping. Defeat a Tormented Thug. So this requires you to kill a Tormented Spirit before it's able to possess anything, which you'll often do just by accident anyway. Tormented Thug is one of the common ones, so when you see spirits, kill them, and you'll get this in no time. Use a Remnant of Corruption on an Essence monolith, so when you encounter essences, sometimes they will be corrupted, and that will then give you a Remnant of Corruption as a reward. Those Remnants of Corruption are usually used strategically to upgrade Screaming Essences of Misery, Dread, Envy, or Scorn. But for the purposes of this challenge, you don't need to save it to use on the right essences. You can just use it on any old essence that you encounter that is not already corrupted, and using the Remnant of Corruption up will get that. Just a side note, Remnants of Corruption are pretty rare in maps, but they're much more common in the Axe. So if you're having trouble finding one, this should only apply to solo self-found players. They're very easy to buy in trade leagues. If you're having trouble finding a Remnant of Corruption, just try going back to Act 9 or 10. I think one zone that's very good for finding them is the foothills, because it's a fairly small zone. Essences don't spawn all that often, but when they do, you'll see them on your minimap. Next up we have Build Blight Towers 1. This is a really trivial one, and you'll have access to all of these by about Act 7. All you need to do is just engage Sister Cassia's events, and make any of them that you don't already have. You don't need to upgrade them to any given tier. That's a separate challenge that will also be part of your first 12. So while you're at it, do try all 6 different types of towers. Find out which ones you find are useful in defeating the encounters. I'm personally very, very partial to using the minion towers and the empowering towers near each other, and also the fireball towers, but that's just my approach. Other people are experiencing a lot of success at these encounters using all sorts of different strategies. I do like using the Ice Bolt towers in harder Blight encounters, because then I can upgrade them to a Glacial Cage tower if there is a boss. But that's also all that strategy with Blights is something that you don't really need to worry about if you're going for 12 challenges. It comes up a bit more if you're going for 24 or 36. Now, next up we have vendor recipes, and you can see I'm pretty lazy here. I've only done 3 of these. This is a crash course in vendor recipes in the game. You can sell certain combinations of items to a vendor in order to receive specific rewards. So you'll see here that I've only done a couple of these, and that's because my usual attitude to these sorts of challenges is just do them at the end of the league when I've got everything that I need, and it's just like, oh yeah, here's some low-hanging fruit, let's just go and finish it now. For these, Blight Oil. The recipe is that you sell 3 of the same Blight Oil, and you will then be rewarded with 1 of the next tier up. So if you sell 3 clear, I believe you get 1 sepia back. This is a little bit wasteful sometimes, but if you use oils that aren't precious, you'll be able to get your vendor recipe done. And if you're using ones that are not from the top 3 or 4 types, then you won't have any problems with the price of that. Next up, you have Cartographer's Chisel. Here you need to sell either 1 map that is 20 quality, or 3 or more maps that add up to 40 or higher quality. Sell that to a vendor, you'll be rewarded with a Cartographer's Chisel. The wasteful way to do this is to just find a plain map and hit it with 4 chisels, then go and sell it straight to a vendor. You'll only get 1 of your chisels back, but that's not a big expense. You can do that if you're really lazy. Alternately, just pick up maps and find quality ones that add up to 40%. Ones that you weren't intending to run. Chaos Orb. For Chaos Orbs, you need to sell an item for every inventory slot. They all need to be rare, and they all need to be item level 60 plus, but at least one of them needs to be item level 74 or lower. If you have all of them 75 plus, you'll get a Regal Orb instead. If the items are unidentified, you will receive an extra Chaos or Regal Orb, and if the items are all 20 quality, at least the ones that accept quality, so that is the helmet, the boots, the gloves, and the torso piece, and the weapons and or shields, if everything is 20 quality, you'll get an extra Chaos or an extra Regal, and ultimately the most you can get is 3 Chaos or 3 Regal Orbs at a time. In practice though, the easiest way to do this is just when you're running content starting from about Act 9, pick up rare jewelry, because jewelry will always be the choke point, and then go to a vendor once you've picked up 2 rings, an amulet, and a belt. Then start picking up the other pieces, and then just go to a vendor and sell everything at once. Don't commit to the sale until you've confirmed that you are receiving Chaos Orbs. It's very easy to mess up and miss a piece. Lastly, you never need a quiver in this recipe. If you're using a bow, that counts as both hands, so you don't need to include a quiver in it. Next up, we have the recipe for a granite flask. Now, there's a few different recipes you can use for some of these, and for the granite flask one, I want to just tell you the easiest one, which is to sell 5 magic granite flasks that are all identified, and you will receive an unidentified magic flask back. It'll be a granite flask, winner winner chicken dinner. There are other recipes as well, but they're much more fiddly. For life flasks, there are 2 ways you can do here. Either you can take 5 magic flasks of the same tier, and just a side note, it's not that well known that you can sell 5 magic or rare items of the same type. So for instance, 5 rare crimson jewels, and you will receive back from the vendor an unidentified rare of that type. So if you were to sell 5 crimson jewels, you'll receive back 1 rare crimson jewel. It'll be the lowest rarity of the items that you turned in. So if you're turning in, if you're turning in 5 magics, you'll get a magic back. If you turn in 5 rares, you'll get a rare back. And I have to confirm if you mix them up. I can't remember whether the vendor recipe fails or whether you receive the lowest rarity, which would be magic. In any case, this recipe is not very useful in standard play, but it's something that this challenge tests your knowledge of. So for the life flask, you can again turn in 5 of a kind of a life flask, so 5 divine life flasks, and you receive a life flask back, the same tier, but it's easier to just turn in one of the low tier life flasks. There is a 3-for-1 upgrade recipe. So if you have 3 small life flasks, you sell them all to a vendor, you'll receive back a medium life flask. Sell 3 mediums, you'll receive a large, and so on and so on. And this goes for a fair way. Eventually this stops working. I can't remember where it is that it stops working. Magic boots with 10% increased movement speed. This one requires you to sell any set of white boots, so scoured boots, plus an orb of augmentation, plus a quicksilver flask. Then you'll receive magic boots with 10% increased movement speed. Fun fact, you can do it again, use those same magic boots, and you'll get a higher movement speed, but there is a cap to it, and that cap is not 35%. Orb of Alchemy. Only going to go through the easy one here, which is to sell a lot of uniques to a vendor in one trade. When you sell unique items, you will usually be given a mixture of alteration shards and alchemy shards. If you can sell enough uniques at once that the number of alchemy shards reaches 20, then you will receive an alchemy orb. Whilst I don't think that's actually the spirit of this challenge, it does work. And as you can see, I've got that, whereas I haven't used the other alchemy orb recipe. The other alchemy orb recipe, for what it's worth, is to sell 3 rare items with the same name. So you could sell 3 maps that are all named Insane Zone, and you will then receive an orb of alchemy for that trade. Needless to say, selling 3 of a kind requires enormous messing around, with one exception, and that one exception is when the prophecy. When a prophecy procs that is called Calandra's Craft, and that causes a rare item to drop 3 copies of itself. So you receive 4 copies of this rare item in total. 3 of them are mirrored, so they can't be altered, and 1 of them is original. You can then vendor 3 of the 4 at once, and you'll receive an Orb of Alchemy that way. That's the other way to do it. But the easy way is just to sell a bunch of unique items in one shot. Orb of Chance. Orb of Chance is 2 rares with the same name. Now, whilst that can also be done with the Calandra Prophecy, the easier way to do it is to find a mirrored strongbox. If that mirrored strongbox drops a rare item, it will drop 2 copies of it, and you will then be able to vendor both. Vaal Orb. Sell 7 Vaal Gems plus 1 fragment, so that's a sacrifice at midnight, sacrifice at noon, sacrifice at dawn, or sacrifice at dusk in one sale. Don't do this often because fragments are worth more than Vaal Orbs in trade leagues most of the time, but that transaction will get you a Vaal Orb. In order to get the 7 Vaal Gems, in Blight League you'll have no trouble getting them because they're frequently dropped by Blights, but you can also get them from Vaal Vessels at the end of Vaal Side Zones. So our 8th challenge is going to be the Act Bosses 2, basically complete the rest of the game up to Kitava. So a lot of us veteran players consider doing all of the acts to be the tutorial for the game, and then the real game starts when you get to maps. Plenty of people think other things as well, and will think that that's the best part of the game. But in any case, that's your goal: is to kill Kitava, the end boss of the first part of the game. Kitava as a fight is fairly difficult if you're a new player, but don't worry, just keep trying it, you'll get it. Now, there's a couple that I haven't left in here. These are challenges that I think are considerably harder than the first 12. So defeat blighted rare monsters, which requires a lot of research into where certain monsters are. Defeat the Elder Guardians and Elder, which is one of the more challenging bosses you'll encounter in the second half of the game once you get into maps. And defeat Rogue Exiles, which is just luck-based. So we're going to skip those because there's plenty of easy ones to come. Craft modifiers. This will be, although it's the 9th challenge I'm talking about, this is one you can do quite early as Act 5 or so. You will need to use the crafting bench in your hideout, and then just go and talk to the crafting bench and just put a craft on various items. You'll notice here that there's always one or two that are very, very cheap. So here there's 26 to 40 life I could put on my chest. It's only going to cost me 6 transmutation orbs, or surprisingly a little bit more if I wanted the lower amount of life. 1 alteration orb, which I think is more in the current economy than 6 transmutes. You probably won't actually benefit from all 9 of these slots, so 1 or 2 of the crafts are going to be wasted, but just pick really cheap ones. So if you're on a character, for instance, that isn't using a shield and that isn't using a quiver, then just pick up any old crappy shield off the ground and just find the cheapest craft you can do, something that costs only a few augmentations or whatever, and then you're done. So that's 9 challenges talked about. Next up we have turn in divination cards. Now this is one that's probably going to require you to get to maps. You can do this in the acts, but you'll need to go out of your way. Most of these divination cards are fairly straightforward as to where you get them. Like corrupted item ones drop everywhere. Currency ones, you'll have the Emperor's Luck, which drops everywhere, and divination card, you will have the Gambler. In fact, I may have got those two around the wrong way. Emperor's Luck and Gambler, in any case, both of them will drop a lot, and you'll have a set of those really easily. The more challenging ones to find. For a bow, the Strand map drops the Stormcloud unique bow divination card. Just get a set of those. It will not take you very many strands at all. You might need to adjust your loot filter to show that. A corrupted item you will definitely find on your own. Essence. Run the city square map or any other map that has 3 bosses in it, and you will very quickly compile a set of the 3 voices divination card. Might take you about 6 or 8 city square maps or race courses, or any of the other 3 boss maps like Crystal Ore, although fair warning, Crystal Ore is a much harder map than the other ones I've talked about. 6 or 8 maps, and you will definitely have your set of 3 copies of 3 voices, which is the easiest divination card to get for these. Gems, there's a lot of these. You'll certainly find a lot of them. Mostly in undead themed content, you will get the one for a minion gem that's 20 quality. There's plenty of other options though, and you'll have no trouble finding that. For a map, there is a divination card that drops in the foothills that gives you a tier 5 map. Very easy to get a set of, probably take you about 6 to 10 runs of the foothills zone in Act 9, and you'll then be able to turn them in, get a tier 5 map, and if you were keen, like if your character feels really powerful, as soon as you kill Kitava, you can even jump straight up to tier 5 maps if you're feeling gutsy enough. For a ring, there is a divination card called the Lover that drops from any zone where Merveil is the boss. So this includes the Underground Sea map, and it drops with a huge drop rate in those. You will, however, encounter one little problem with this, and a lot of loot filters will hide that divination card, so you'll need to make sure that it's not being hidden on you. We are not even going to talk about complete these encounters 2. This is a legitimately hard one. Complete Blight Encounters 2 is going to be our 11th divination card. Oh, not divination card. What am I talking about divination cards? I've got them on the brain. This is going to be our 11th challenge. And completing one with no towers built is all about overpowering the monsters on your own. Blight monsters are much tougher than ordinary monsters. They have a lot more hit points. However, you don't need to be a damage fiend to achieve this. All you need to do is go back to a zone that's about 8 levels lower than your character and just abuse the fact that you are so much more powerful than all the monsters around you, slaughter them all, don't build a tower. You'll have no trouble achieving this. It might take you a couple of tries, but you will get there. When the Ichor pump is at full durability is also very easy. This is again just going to come down to overpowering the monsters. The hard one. While the Ichor pump has 1 durability remaining, what you need to do here is carefully manage the monsters so that exactly 9 hits are taken by the pump. This can be quite tricky. I got this by dumb luck, and it's going to take you a lot of tries to get it, but you will get there with persistence. What you need to do is go to an area where you absolutely dominate all the monsters, and then carefully kill all but one of a wave. Let that one monster get to the pump, and then let it do its thing, and just take a bit of time watching it, babysitting it. You may need to have more than one monster get to the pump, in which case it's just all about repeating until you get there. If you're having trouble with Blight Encounters 2, it will be because of this 1 durability, and don't worry, there's a bonus one that I'll talk about that you'll have no trouble getting. For our 12th challenge, we're going to talk about Blight Towers 2. So Blight Towers 2 is quite a way down. You'll notice that we're jumping over a bunch of harder challenges, things that people will get when they're going for 24. Blight Towers 2 it will probably take you until about Act 5. Sorry, not about Act 5, until about Tier 5 maps. What you need to do here is run a bunch of Blights, and in each one, you'll need to fully upgrade one different type of tower. Fully building and upgrading a tower takes 1,050 resources, so it's 100 to build it, 150 to get it to Tier 2, 300 more to get it to Tier 3, and then 500 to get it to Tier 4. When you go from Tier 3 to Tier 4, you will have a choice to make. For instance, if you are building a lightning tower, it will be Shock Nova Tower at Tiers 1, 2, and 3, and then at Tier 4 you will get to choose. Do you want it to be an Arc Tower, or do you want it to be a Lightning Storm Tower? These have different effects. And if you're in about Tier 5 maps, you will have enough resources to fully upgrade a tower. So what you want to do is stay near the center of the encounter, work on upgrading a tower to Tier 3 as quickly as you can, then kill enough monsters to gain the extra resources to then bump one up to Tier 4. Just choose a different thing each time, and don't give up if you occasionally fail a Blight because you're not using an optimal strategy, you're targeting this specific challenge. Next up, so that's your 12 challenges. 13th challenge that I think is worth keeping your mind on is obtain rewards from Blight chests. Now I had this one quite early. You don't need to encounter all of these different reward types, and you'll find that most of these are somewhat uncommon, but not super rare. So you'll find that armors are everywhere, weapons are everywhere, generic is everywhere, and then the rest of them will be more or less common depending upon the zone you're in and various other factors, how hard the map you're in is. However, you only need to get 19 of the 23, and as you can see, I've got all 23 of them whilst I haven't been playing. Well, I mean, I've been playing a fair bit, but I haven't gone for 24 challenges yet. You'll find that this is something you will get through natural gameplay as long as you are doing most of the Blights you encounter in maps, and you'll probably get there in a reasonable time. The ones that are a bit rarer, Parandus ones are pretty rare, Scarabs are one of the rarest. The ones for uniques are somewhat rare, Talismans are somewhat rare, and Abyss ones are Abyss and Bestiary are somewhat rare, but none of them are staggeringly rare, and maps can be a little bit rare sometimes as well. Labyrinth and Harbinger are a little bit more common from my memory, and the Legion one is quite rare. But when I'm saying rare, I'm not talking 1 per 1,000 maps, I'm talking 1 per 20 maps or so to get any of these, so none of them are staggeringly rare. So that one should be an easy 13th one to pick up. And then your 14th one is probably going to be either reaching level 90 or completing your Ascendancy. So completing the Eternal Labyrinth. Those are the other two that I would keep in mind. They're likely to be your 14th and 15th challenges, depending upon your pattern of play and whether you're picking up all of the low-hanging fruit. There's a number of other ones you can continue as well, but I'll save them for the video talking about going for 24 challenges. If you've got any questions, definitely fire away. Otherwise, I hope you have a good one.